Good morning, students. We are back to chapter 4, that is chemical bonding. Till now we have seen in this chapter like what is the definition of a chemical bond, what is the Lewis approach, that is what is Lewis dot structure. It's the simplest way of representing the valence electron, that is Lewis dot structure. Then we saw what is Cosel's approach on a chemical bond. Then we saw about ionic bond, we saw covalent bond, what is a polar bond, what is non-polar bond, we saw what is Octet rule, then what are the limitations of Octet rule, that is expanded octet, incomplete octet, like that we saw. Today we are going to concentrate on the properties of chemical bond. We are going to look into some of the definitions and we will be dealing with VSPR theory, which is very important in this chapter. Now moving on to the properties of chemical bond. What is the first definition involved in the properties of the chemical bond? It is bond length. What is bond length defined as? Bond length is defined as the distance between the nuclei of two bonded atoms in a molecule. You know what is meant by molecule? Two hydrogen atom, when they are bonded together, they form a molecule. And what is the equilibrium distance between the nuclei of two bonded atoms in a molecule is called as bond length. Okay, clear? I have, say for example, I have magnesium atom, they are bonded together, and what is the distance between their nuclei in a molecule? That is defined as the that is defined as a bond length. And what is covalent radius? It is defined as half the distance between the two covalently bonded diatomic element. Okay, I have say for example oxygen atom. Now what is half the distance between them? That is called as covalent radius. See from the name, covalent radius. So distance, half the distance between the nuclei of two covalently bonded diatomic element. I have two atoms. The two atoms should be linked by means of a covalent bond, and half the distance between the nuclei of two covalently linked diatomic molecule is called as your covalent radius. So we know what is bond angle. What is bond angle? Bond angle is nothing but equilibrium distance between the nuclei of two bonded atoms in a molecule. That is called as bond angle. What is covalent radius? It is half the distance between the nuclei of two covalently bonded atoms in a diatomic molecule. What is van der Waals radius? See, van der Waals radius is going to represent the overall size of an atom. It is going to represent the entire size of an atom. For example, see, whenever I am going to call the size of the atom, then I am going to call the nuclei, then inner orbitals, then valence electrons. So the van der Waals radius is representing the size of the atom. This is going to include the valence shell even in non-bonded situations. Or I can define the van der Waals radius as distance between the nuclei of two adjacent non-bonded atoms. Now I have two atoms which are not bonded together. Now they are nearby because they are adjacent to each other. So it is nothing but the distance between the nuclei of two non-bonded atoms which are located adjacent to each other. This is called as van der Waals radius. Van der Waals radius. Let me represent van der Waals radius again. Van der Waals radius is defined as distance between the nuclei of two non-bonded atoms which are located adjacent to each other. This is called as van der Waals radius. Now what is bond angle? Angle between the orbitals containing bonding electron pairs around the central atom in a molecule or in a complex ion. I'll be doing a separate video on bonded electrons, like paired electrons, unpaired electrons, bonded atoms, etc. I'm doing a separate video on that using a whiteboard. Now what is bond angle? It is nothing but angle between the orbitals containing bonding electron pairs around the central atom. We have been discussing this point from the beginning. There is a central atom around which we have s, p, d, f orbitals, and each orbital's electrons are revolving. So what does your bond angle say? Bond angle is representing the angle between the orbitals which are containing electron pairs. They all are bonded. So bonded electron pairs around a central atom. This is called as bond angle. An example which they have given for bond angle is, in water molecule, HOH bond angle is said to be 104.5 degrees. Now, there are few more examples, that is, what is bond enthalpy? What is bond enthalpy? Bond enthalpy is defined as the amount of energy required to break 1 mole of bond of a particular type between two atoms in a gaseous state. We know about ionization enthalpy, then we know EGE. What is bond enthalpy? Bond enthalpy is nothing but amount of energy required to break a bond between two atoms which are present in the gaseous state. See, the bonds should be of particular type. Say for example, if I want to break S type, then amount of energy required to break a particular type of bond should be either S type or should be P type. So what is bond enthalpy? Bond enthalpy is defined as amount of energy required to break a bond of particular type in a gaseous state. Okay, between two atoms in a gaseous state is called as bond enthalpy. Now say for example, the bond enthalpy of H2. See, this is hydrogen molecule. Two hydrogen atoms are linked together by means of bond. Now I want to break a bond between two hydrogen atoms. Now how much amount of energy is required to break a bond between two hydrogen atoms? It should be 435.8 kilojoules per mole. Since the amount of energy, I am representing it with kilojoules. Now say for example, I told you amount of energy required to break a bond in a particular molecule between two atoms. Okay. Now consider a case where I have a polyatomic molecule. There are many atoms present in it. So I need more amount of energy to break each bond. Because it's a polyatomic molecule, a large number of atoms are held together by many bonds. So I need more energy to break each of these bonds. So in that case, the bond enthalpy term is replaced by average bond enthalpy or mean bond enthalpy. Okay, clear? So bond enthalpy is amount of energy required to break a particular type of bond between two atoms in the gaseous state. But if I am going to consider a case of polyatomic molecule, then instead of the term bond enthalpy, I will be using mean bond enthalpy or average bond enthalpy. See, and how will you obtain this? How will you get this average bond enthalpy? See, it is obtained by dividing the total bond dissociation enthalpy by the number of bonds broken. Okay. So, how will you get the value of average or mean bond enthalpy? You need to keep the numerator as total bond dissociation enthalpy and the denominator as number of bonds broken. So, when I get this, I will be getting the value for average bond enthalpy or mean bond enthalpy. Now, what is bond order? Number of bonds, we have already discussed about bond order. See, this is a proper definition for bond order. It is nothing but number of bonds present between two atoms in a molecule. This is called as bond order. Now you can tell me an example. For example, in a hydrogen molecule, what is a bond order? Two hydrogen atoms are held together by one bond, so the bond order is 1. Now say for example, two oxygen molecule. Now two oxygen atoms are bonded. Now what is the bond order? Two oxygen atoms are linked by two electron pairs. There will be two bonds, so the bond order is equal to 2. Now say for example, nitrogen molecule, two nitrogen atoms are held together or bonded together. So in between there will be 3 electron pairs, means 3 bonds, so bond order is equal to 3. So I have cited 3 examples as hydrogen molecule, oxygen molecule and a nitrogen molecule for bond order 1, 2 and 3 respectively. Okay. Now, say for example, isoelectronic species, they have identical bond orders. We have already discussed this from chapter 1. So, isoelectronic species, for them the bond order is same. The bond order will be same. That is, they have identical bond orders. Now, when you increase the bond order, then bond enthalpy increases, bond length decreases. See, apparently I can tell if I increase the bond order, if I increase the number of bonds otherwise, then what happens? The amount of energy required to break each of these bonds obviously increases. When that increases, the bond length decreases. So am I correct? So these 3 are correlated. So what is the statement? When I increase the bond order, then indirectly I am increasing the number of bonds. If I am increasing the number of bonds, then amount of energy to record each of these bonds increases, means the bond enthalpy increases. If bond enthalpy increases, then bond length decreases. That's what the statement. Now we are moving to the next topic, that is molecular geometry. What is this? This is molecular geometry. How will you predict the geometry of a particular compound or a particular element or a molecule? Now, to predict the molecular geometry of atom or molecule, we have our VSEPR theory. What is the abbreviation of VSEPR theory? Valence shell electron pair repulsion theory. So what is that? It is valence shell electron pair repulsion theory. Okay. Now what is the postulates of this theory? The main postulates of the theory are, you can determine the shape of a molecule. So here the shape of the molecule depends upon number of electrons which are present in the valence shell. They can be bonded or non-bonded around the central atom. So this is clear. So when I want to predict or determine the molecular geometry of particular atom or molecule, I should know the number of valence electrons present in the outermost shell. So the number of electrons which are present in the valence shell can be non-bonded or bonded around the central atom. This is your first postulate. And the pair of electrons which are present in the valence shell, they repel one another because all electron pairs are negatively charged. So this is clear. So I told you around a central atom we have different subshells, P, S, D, F like that, and each would be having electron pairs. Now there is an repulsion between the orbitals because they all are negatively charged. So there is a repulsion between all these electron pairs, and these pair of electrons, in order to minimize the repulsion, they try to occupy such a position such that they are maximizing the distance between them. Okay, clear? See, I am telling you, the electron pairs started repelling each other. They want to avoid this repulsion. So what they are doing, they are trying to increase the distance between them. They are maximizing the distance. If they are maximizing the distance, then obviously the electron pair repulsion is reduced. So that's what the third postulate. The pair of electrons, they tend to occupy such a position in a space to minimize the repulsion. So if they minimize repulsion, then they are maximizing the distance between them. In order to avoid minimize, they have to maximize the distance between them. So the valence, so I am going to imagine the last shell, that is outermost shell, as valence shell. Now that should be assumed as a sphere, and all the electron pairs are situated in the sphere such that there is maximum distance between them in order to avoid the repulsion. See, the valence shell is taken as a sphere where the electron pairs localizing on the spherical surface are at maximum distance from one another. Okay, clear? So what is valence shell electron pair repulsion theory? This theory is used to determine the molecular geometry of a molecule. How to determine? By knowing the number of electron pairs which are located in the valence shell. Now as we know, around the central atom we have different subshells, and these subshells have many electron pairs. So these electron pairs started repelling one another. They started to repel each other. Why? Because they all are negatively charged. In order to minimize the repulsion, they started maximizing the distance between them. As a result, the repulsion is reduced. If you consider the valence shell as a sphere and the number of electron pairs which are located in the sphere, they will be located with maximum distance in order to avoid the repulsion. So they have maximized the distance from one another. Now, as per our VSEPR theory, I should treat a multiple bond as a single bond. See, a multiple bond is treated as if it's a single electron pair. I told you one multiple pair. A multiple bond, say for example, a bond which is present between N and N atom, that is 2N atom, there are three electron pairs. So, a multiple bond here is treated as if it is a single electron pair. But originally there is 3 electron pairs between a nitrogen atom and a nitrogen atom. As per VSEPR theory, that should be treated as one electron pair, a single electron pair. Now what happens to 2 or 3 electron pairs of a multiple bond? Now they are also treated as single superpair. Now since 2 or 3 electron pairs of a multiple bond should all be treated as a super single pair. That should be treated as a super single pair. Okay, clear? I am repeating this postulate. Multiple bond is treated as though it is a single electron pair. And what happens to 2 or 3 electron pairs of a multiple bond? They are treated as single super pair. Now, so we have 2 to 3 resonating structures. Say for example, benzene have 2 resonating structures. You know the structure of benzene. Just imagine you have a hexagonal ring where I have put inside 3 bonds, 1, 2, 3, or I can there are 2 ways by which writing. There is no any specific way that only in the left hand side 2 bonds should come and right hand side 1 single bond should come. There is no any definite rule. So they oscillate between 2 resonating structures. So in 2 or more resonating structures, the VSPR model is applicable to any such a structure. So when you have for a particular molecule 2 or 3 resonating structures, then your VSPR theory is applicable to any one of such structures. Okay, you cannot do it for 2 resonating or 3 resonating structure. It's applicable only for one of the resonating structures. Now, I told you there is a repulsion between electron pairs. See, the repulsive interaction of electron pairs will be decreasing in this order. That is lone pair, lone pair, lone pair, bond pair, bond pair, bond pair. This is how the order of repulsive interaction of electron pairs will be decreasing. Okay, clear? So what is the main postulates of VSPR theory? The electron pairs are repelling each other around the central atom. In order to avoid repulsion, I am maximizing the distance between them. Here, a multiple bond is treated as single electron pair, and 2 to 3 electron pairs present in such multiple bond will be treated as super pair. And what is the last point? When you have 2 to 3 resonating structures, then VSPR theory is applicable only to one such a structure. Then the order of repulsive force decreases in this particular order, that is lone pair, lone pair, lone pair, bond pair, bond pair, bond pair. Okay. Now, what are the geometry? I told you a VSPR theory helps to predict the molecular geometry of a particular compound. Now, what are the possible geometries which is present in a particular atom or molecule? This is linear geometry. Yes, no, there is no branches. Simply the structure is linear. And this is trigonal planar. 1, 2, 3. Trigonal planar. Here you have 4, so it is tetrahedral. 1, 2, 3, 4. Tetrahedral. Say for example, now we have seen 3 possible geometry, that is linear geometry, trigonal, planar and tetrahedral. Now how to represent the structures? Okay, now these are the 3 examples for the 3 different geometry which we have seen before. First one is beryllium chloride. Beryllium chloride. How many valence electrons are present in Be? There are 2 valence electrons, that is in outermost shell. How many electrons are present in beryllium? It is 2. Okay, written. How many bonds it can form with the chlorine? Since it has 2 valence electrons, it has 2. So obviously the 2 should be involved in pairing with other atoms. Here the other atom is chlorine. So how many bonds should be formed with chlorine? 2 bonds should be formed with chlorine. Now how many bond pairs are formed? Since there is 2, it can form only 2 pairs with its partner, that is to chlorine it can form 2 pairs. So the number of bond pairs is 2. There is no lone pair. Your beryllium is not left with free electron pair such that it is vacant. It has got 2. Say for example, I can tell the valency as the hands of a particular atom. Since it has got 2 hands, the 2 hands is going to bond with, or it's going to pair with its partner 2 chlorine atoms. Now the total number of electron pairs is number of bond pairs plus lone pair. Number of bond pairs is 2, number of lone pairs is 0, so it is 2. When you look into the shape of the shape of the molecule is linear, and what is the bond angle? Bond angle is 180 degrees. Absolutely clear. Now moving to BF3. In BF3, now how many number of electrons are present in this central atom boron? It is 3. The number of electrons present in the valence shell of boron is 3. Now how many bonds it can form with fluorine? How many fluorine atoms are there? 3. How many electron pairs are present in valence shell? 3. So 3 atoms of boron can form electron pair, or it can form pair with the 3 atoms of fluorine. So the number of bonds is 3. So number of bond pairs is 3, number of lone pairs is 0, because all the 3 hands are involved in pairing with the 3 atoms of fluorine. There is no any lone pair here. How will you calculate the total number of electron pairs? Total number of electrons is equal to number of bonded pairs plus number of lone pairs. So 3 plus 0 is equal to 3. So what is the shape of the molecule? 3. So it is trigonal planar, for which the bond angle is 120 degrees. Now this is methane molecule CH4. So how many electrons are present in the valence shell? 4 electrons are present. So how many bonds or how many pairs it can make with the hydrogen atom? How many hydrogen atom are present? So 4 hands of your carbon is going to pair with 4 hands. I mean, it is going to pair with 4 atoms of hydrogen. So the number of bonded pairs is 4. Is there any pair left out for carbon? No, all its 4 hands are fully occupied in pairing with 4 hydrogen atoms. So none of it is left unpaired. So the number of unpairs is 0. From this, when you calculate the total number of electron pairs present, which is nothing but number of bond pair plus number of lone pair. So 4 plus 0 is equal to 4. Since it is 4, what should be the shape? It should be tetrahedral. And what is your bond angle? The bond angle is 109.5 degrees. Corresponding to the shape of the molecule, you need to remember the bond angle. PCl5. So how many valence electrons are present in phosphorus? 5. All 5 hands are involved in pairing with 5 pairs of chlorine. I mean to 5 atoms of chlorine. So the number of bonded pairs is 5. None of the hands is left unpaired. So number of unpaired electron is 0. So since it is 5, I am going to say the shape of the molecule as trigonal bipyramidal. Trigonal 3 is involved, bipyramidal 2. So 3 plus 2, 5. Trigonal bipyramidal. Its bond angle should be 120 and 90. Bond angle should be 120 and 90. Next, sulfur hexafluoride. The central atom is sulfur. How many hands it has got? 6. The number of electrons present in the valence shell is 6. So all the 6 hands of sulfur is involved in forming a pair with the 6 atoms of fluorine. None of the hands is left unpaired. So number of unpaired electron is 0. Number of bonded pair is 6. So since it is 6, what is the shape? The shape of the molecule is octahedral. Don't confuse. Generally octahedral represent 8. Octa is 8. But you know, I am telling about this 6. So don't get confused with this. The shape of the molecule, the geometry which I am telling you is completely different from this. You know, apparently I am helping you to remember. Since it is 3, I told you tetragonal biplanar. Since it is 4, I told tetrahedral. 5, for remembrance, I told you it should be trigonal as well as bipyramidal. 3 plus 2, 5. That is for helping you to remembrance. SF6 structure will be octahedral, whose bond angle is 90 degrees. Okay, now this is a tabular column which is present even in your textbook. Say for example, the number of electron pairs, if it is 2, how they will be arranged, and what is the electron domain geometry, and what is the predicted bond angle. If the number of electron domain is 3, how they will be arranged, what is the predicted electron domain geometry? It is trigonal biplanar. The predicted bond angle is 120. Whatever I have discussed in the previous slide, the same is represented in the form of a tabular column. 4 tetrahedral, bond angle 109.5 degrees. Since it is 5 trigonal bipyramidal, I am discussing about electron domain geometry. Okay, and what is the bond angle? Predicted bond angle for trigonal it is 120, for bipyramidal it is 90 degrees. And this is octahedral, but when you look into this picture, you can see 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 6 number of atoms, number of electron pairs. So octahedral, and the possible geometry, the predicted geometry is 90 degrees. And this is how the real concept of structural determination by VSPR theory. Now I have ammonia molecule whose formula is NH3. You all knew. Now the bond pair is 3, lone pair is 1. So 3 plus 1, the total number of electron pair is 4. But as per the electron pair, you can predict. If it is 4, what should be the possible shape? It should be tetrahedral. Done. But how will you represent lone pair? Lone pair I have 1 and bonded pair is 3. See, the lone pair will be located in the tetrahedral position. This is how the position will be. So the molecular geometry, when you look into, the position of atoms is trigonal pyramidal. Till now I predicted the geometry as per the electron domain, like how many number of electrons were present. Accordingly I predicted the geometry in the previous slide. In this tabular column, as per the electron domain, the number of electron domain, I just predicted the molecular geometry. Now comes the real structural. Now comes the sorry, I showed the previous slide actually. This is the slide where as per the number of electron domains, I predicted the electron domain geometry and I predicted the bond angles. Okay children. Now comes the real structural determination by VSPR theory, where I have taken ammonia molecule. The lone pair is 1, the bond pair is 3. And from this, when you look into the number of atoms which are present, the molecular geometry is said to be, this is said to be trigonal pyramidal. It is trigonal pyramidal. Okay, it's looking like a triangle, trigonal pyramidal. Now, this is the second example of structure determination by VSPR. This is for water molecule. Okay. In water molecule, the lone pair is 2, the bond pair is 2. I am giving you a separate video to calculate the lone pair and the bonded pair. Okay. See, the lone pair is 2, the bonded pair is 2. So, how I am going to represent the lone pair, the electron pair geometry? When you look into the geometry, since it is 4, you will be just telling me it's a tetrahedral, ma'am. But when you look into the possible geometry of the number of atoms, then I can tell it's a bent molecule. I can tell it's a bent molecule. Okay. Now, what is the effect of non-bonding electrons present? Okay. See children, as far as the first slide, that is the previous slide where I predicted the geometry as per the electron domain, that was quite different from the actual structural determination by VSPR theory. Why it is different? There it was exactly coinciding. If it is 3, it is trigonal. If it is 4, it is tetrahedral. If it is 2, it is linear. And if it is 6, it is octahedral. Like that, it was exactly tallying. But when I applied it in the VSPR theory, it was not exactly correlating with the number of atoms. Why? Because there is one more fellow who was interrupting. It is nothing but number of lone pairs and number of bond pairs. So now the presence of this lone pair and bonded pairs, or the number of bonded pairs and number of unbonded pairs, they are giving you a significant effect such that the number of atoms, the electron domain geometry was not correlating. Say for example, we looked into two structures where water molecule, it is going to have a bent structure as per the number of atom, and when you look into ammonia, ammonia is having trigonal pyramidal structure. Why is this happening? This is because of the effect of non-bonding electrons. Okay, this is because of the effect of non-bonding electrons. Now in experiment, the hydrogen bond angle decreases on moving from carbon to nitrogen, nitrogen to oxygen. Yes, no, obviously you look into the bond angle, it was 109.5, then it has decreased to 107. From 107 it has decreased to 104.5. It is decreasing, it goes on decreasing. Because the electrons in a bond are attracted by two nuclei, they don't repel as much as lone pair. Hope you all remember the trend which we followed, like how the electron pair repulsion decreases between lone pair, lone pair, lone pair, bond pair, bond pair, bond pair. Am I clear? You remember that trend? Hope you remember even this statement too. The bond order increases, bond enthalpy increases, then bond angle decreases. Okay, you remember this two statement very clearly. Now I am telling you, the electrons in the bond will be attracted by two nuclei. Electrons are attracted towards two nuclei. They won't repel as though how they will be repelled when they are in lone pairs. So therefore the bond angle decreases as the number of lone pair increases. So bond angle decreases when the number of lone pair increases. Now I am repeating this slide again. This is the effect of non-bonding electrons as per VSPR theory. The bond angle decreases as we move from carbon to nitrogen and nitrogen to oxygen. The bond angle is decreasing from 109 to 7 to 104.5. Why is this happening? Because the electrons are attracted towards two nuclei and there is not much repulsion as it would have been when they were as lone pairs. And also the bond angle is decreasing as the number of lone pair increases. Okay, as the number of lone pair increases, the bond angle decreases. Now this is the exact VSPR model of predicting the molecular geometry. Now the number of electron domain is 2. Yeah, children, is it clear? Number of electron pairs is 2. So electron domain geometry is linear. Even the molecular geometry is linear because there is no any non-bonding pair. Now consider the second case where the number of electron domain is 3. So the electron domain geometry should be trigonal, 3, correct. But what happens to the molecular geometry? That is also trigonal biplanar and it can be bent, which we have seen in case of ammonia molecule. Okay. Now, if the number of electrons is 4, electron domain is 4, then this part you can write on your own without seeing. Since it is 4, it is tetrahedral. But when you look into the molecular geometry, because of the effect of these non-bonding domains, it is not exactly same as that of tetrahedral. It can be tetrahedral and it can be trigonal bipyramidal and it can be bent, which we have seen as in case of water molecule. Okay, children? See, I will tell you a literal example. Just imagine the number of electron domain. If it is 2, electron domain geometry is linear. But what happens to the molecular geometry? It can be linear. It can be linear. Okay, that part is clear. Now the number of electron domain is 3. What happens to the electron domain geometry? If it is 3, it is trigonal. Done. But what happens to the molecular geometry? It can be trigonal or it can be bent. Okay, clear. I am just relating both the slides. Moving to the number of electron domains, 4. If the number of electron domains is 4, then electron domain geometry is tetrahedral. What happens to the molecular geometry? It can be tetrahedral or it can be trigonal bipyramidal or it can be bent molecule. Okay, children. Now, if the number of electron domain is 5, it is trigonal bipyramidal in electron domain geometry. What happens to the molecular geometry because of these non-bonding domains? Okay, it can be trigonal bipyramidal, it can be seesaw, it can be T-shape or it can be linear shape. Okay, children. So this is due to the impact of these non-bonding and bonding domains. If it is 6, as per our electron domain theory, it is only octahedral. But here in molecular geometry, it can be octahedral, square pyramidal or square planar. Okay. Now, see, our Lewis dot structure has some demerits. We cannot be writing the electron dot structures for the atoms which have very large atomic number. Say for example, chromium, copper, nickel and all. It's very difficult to draw the electron dot structure as per our Lewis. Even our VSPR theory also fails to explain the geometry of many compounds. So we have moved to the third one, quantum mechanical model. Okay, I am repeating. See, Lewis approach helped us to write the structure of molecules, but it didn't explain about the chemical bond. What happens to VSPR theory? It gives the geometry of simple molecules, it was okay, but for complicated complex molecules, it has failed to give us the approach to write the shape of it, failed to give us the steps to determine the shape of complex molecule. So we have moved to quantum mechanical model. In order to overcome the limitation of Lewis and VSPR model, we have moved to quantum mechanical model. There are two theories based on quantum mechanical model. One is valence bond theory and other one is molecular orbital theory. So what are the two approaches of quantum mechanical model? It is valence bond theory and it is molecular orbital theory. What is valence bond theory? It was proposed by the scientist Hitler and London and it was further developed by the scientist Pauling. Developed by Hitler and London and developed by Pauling and others. We have to start the formation of hydrogen molecule. Now I am explaining about valence bond theory. This is coming under quantum theory. Okay, this is coming under quantum theory. In order to overcome the limitation of Lewis dot and the VSPR model, we have moved to quantum mechanical model. Under quantum mechanical model, I am going to explain about valence bond theory. Okay, who developed, you know. Now I am going to take the example of formation of hydrogen molecule from hydrogen atom. Okay. Now you consider two hydrogen atoms A and B. The nuclei is represented as Na and B. Okay, I have two hydrogen atom. Their name is A, B. The nuclei is represented as Na and B. And electrons present in them was represented as Ea, Eb. Ea, Na for atom A. Eb, Nb for atom B. Okay, clear. Now attractive force arise. As obviously you know, attractive forces arise. The nucleus of attractive force arises between two cases. It arises in two cases. What are the two cases? Between its own atom and own electron. That is Na and Ea. Okay, this is a possible case. Na, Ea, Nb, Eb. Second case is nucleus of one atom and electron of other atom. That is between Na and Eb, between Nb and Ea. Okay, clear children? Now I am atom A and he is atom B. Consider I am NaEA, that is nucleus of atom A and electron of atom A. He is NbEA. Attractive force arises in two cases between my own nucleus and my own atom, NaEA, NbEb. An attractive force can arise between opposite, between Na and Eb and Nb and Ea. Up to this clear? No doubt. Now repulsion. Repulsive force arise in three cases. Arise in two cases. One is like two atoms between electrons of two like atoms, that is Ea, Eb, nuclei of two atoms Na, Nb. Okay, these are repulsive forces. But attractive force try to bring two hydrogen atoms together. Your repulsive force try to push the two atoms apart from each other. Now when attraction happens and when repulsion happens, this is a flowchart. See, when the distance between two hydrogen atom is 74 picometer, then repulsion is equal to attraction. The bond between two hydrogen atom is strongest, their overlapping is optimal, and they have lowest energy. Clear children? When the bond between two hydrogen atom is equal to 74 picometer, then attractive force is equal to repulsive force. Optimal overlapping happens in this case. That will be lower energy. The energy will be lower. Okay. Now moving to the case where the distance between two hydrogen atom is greater than 74 picometer. Now I'm doing case 2 where distance between two hydrogen atom is greater than 74 picometer. In this case attraction is more. When H bond distance is greater than 74 picometer, then attractive force predominates, bond is weaker, little overlapping happens, atoms come closer. Okay, am I correct? Yeah, repulsion is less than attraction, so weaker bond, too little overlap, atoms come closer. Clear? Now moving to case 3 where hydrogen distance is less than 74 picometer. First I was explaining when hydrogen distance is greater than 74 picometer. Now here when hydrogen distance is less than 74 picometer, then repulsion is more than attraction, weaker bond, too much overlapping, atoms get further apart. Okay? Okay children? Yeah. Orbital overlap. Okay. Up to this clear? So we have seen three cases when HH bond distance is equal to 74 picometer, when it is less than 74 picometer what happens, when it is greater than 74 picometer what happens. So these are the cases which we have seen. The remaining we will be seeing in the next session children. Thank you.